Excellent. We've got some people joining us online. I can see the numbers going up there. Welcome everyone from wherever you are around Australia. My name is Jackie Owen and I'm the Relationship Manager at the College of Law based in Queensland. But this is a national webinar going out across the beautiful state of Queensland, but also all across our wonderful country as we're all in our own homes. So it's really interesting to peek into everyone's offices and homes and see where they are sitting. So welcome everyone. So I'll introduce you all to the panel. We have got Sarah Jane MacDonald, and Sarah Jane is coming to us from Toowoomba. So Sarah Jane is the Legal Practitioner Director of MacDonald Law, and she's actually also the President of the Downs and Southwestern Queensland Law Association in Toowoomba, so based in Toowoomba. So we're going to be chatting further to Sarah Jane about what district law associations are all about and how students can get involved there. It's a great networking opportunity. So welcome, Sarah Jane. We've got Tim representing Far North Queensland. So Tim is a Barrister-at-Law in the Equity Chambers in Cairns. So welcome from the top part, the tippy top pointy bit of Australia. Welcome, Tim. We've got Rowan King. He's in the middle in central Queensland. He's the principal lawyer of RK Law based in Rockhampton. So that's his own practice there. And then we've got Lauren Townsend. Now, Lauren is a solicitor with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Service. So ATSILS for short. And she's based way out west in Mount Isa. So welcome, Lauren. And Lauren is probably going to turn her video off, but we wanted to welcome you with her lovely smile first, but she's having some bandwidth issues out west. So we can hear her a lot clearer if she turns her video on, but that is what Lauren looks like. So what we might do is go around the room and maybe Sarah Jane, we'll start with you if you'd like to just give us a little introduction to the career that you've had so far in the law.
Thanks, Jackie. So my name's Sarah Jane MacDonald, as Jackie just introduced me, and I am the Legal Practitioner Director of a firm called MacDonald Law, which is based in Toowoomba, which is in the sort of southwestern Queensland region. So I finished from law school and obtained a Bachelor of Laws in about 2013, and I was admitted as a solicitor in 2014 in the Supreme Court of Queensland, and also in the admitted as well in the High Court that year. I primarily focus and practice in family law, but I did work in a firm during my law degree. So I'm sort of a bit of a jack of all trades and have a bit of knowledge around a few different areas of law. And as Jackie mentioned, I'm also the president of the Downs and Southwestern Queensland Law Association, which is a district law association that deals with a very large region. So from Toowoomba down south towards the border, through Gundawindi to the border of New South Wales, and then out west all the way to the border there as well. So it's a really large region. So I like to travel quite a bit, get around and talk to everyone and see everyone, and I'm a big fan of networking. So lovely to meet you all.
Thank you, Sarah Jane, very much for that. So we might go far north up to Tim and get Tim to introduce himself and let us know about what it's like to be a barrister in Cairns.
Thanks, Jackie. Welcome, everybody. Yes, as Jackie said, I'm a barrister in Cairns. I'm in a chamber of 3 other barristers called Equity Chambers. My journey to the law was quite late in life. I had worked for a very long time in politics in Sydney, Canberra and in Brisbane. And then in about 2008, 2009, I moved to Cairns for family reasons. Before that, so I did work in politics, then I ran a consulting business out of Sydney for a very long time doing corporate comms, issues management and that sort of work. And then in 2008, 2009, I moved to Cairns for family reasons. And my business wasn't really viable in Cairns because I had national, international clients in Sydney, and that wasn't really a viable thing in the far north. So I thought, well, I better do something else, and I started a law degree in the mid 2010, 11, on 2012, I think it was. So very late to the law, but had a vast experience in sort of advocacy and a different style to the courtroom, but nevertheless working in and around law. And I actually, in fact, was involved with a significant High Court case called where the foreign or the US movie studios were suing IINet for breach of copyright, and that went through the federal court, the full federal court, and the High Court. And my role was working with IINet. They were a client of mine when I was running my business, and doing their litigation support and communications around that High Court case. I was pleased that they actually won all three of those cases. But that sort of had sparked my interest even more in the law, and I suppose that was a natural thing for me to move into when I did so. So I did my law degree at JCU in Cairns, then went straight from that to become the Associate to Justice Henry. There's a Supreme Court judge based here in Cairns, and then went straight from there to the bar. So I've been at the bar now for just over 2 years, predominantly working in crime, though we're sort of hired guns, so we'll work in any area that we need to. But predominantly crime, a bit of family, a bit of moving into a bit of succession law at the moment as well, and employment. So that's sort of my background. As I said, very late to the law, but loving being a barrister. And in fact, ironically, I'm a big city person. I prefer big cities. If I had my choice, I'd be living in New York or Los Angeles or Sydney. But for family reasons, I'm in Cairns. And the great irony is, in actual fact, and we'll get into this later in the session, is it's the best place for me to be a young baby barrister, as it were. It provides a whole range of opportunities that I wouldn't get if I was living in those big cities that I like.
That's excellent. And I must also mention that JCU Cairns Inter Alia Law Student Society is co-hosting this event. It was their idea they proposed this topic, and they've helped organise this event tonight. So hello to Andrew Evans and the team way up the tippy toppy in Cairns, and Tim is actually a former president of that Law Student Society, so that's his connection there. So welcome to all the Cairns people. We did have someone say that they're a mature age student and that they're a bit nervous to start applying for jobs. And what would you be, sorry, before I get to Lauren and Rowan, what would you be your response to that be, Tim, coming to the law after possibly another career? Rowan and Sarah Jane said, lawyers are quite friendly and great to network, and Rowan's also said other skills bringing to that second career are really important as well.
Yes, well, I mean, certainly I'd worked in and around the law and legislation as a political advisor in ministers' offices, so I worked for premiers and ministers, so the law was not foreign to me, and I certainly found the transition relatively easy. And in the advantage of being in the regional community too is that, certainly in Cairns, I can speak for, it's a very collegiate community, and so it was very easy to become part of that community. I was active as you indicated, in the student association, and been active in the local FNQLA, which is the equivalent to the association that Sarah Jane's involved in, the one from up here, and also the NQLA, which is the North Queensland one. Someone's asked online, I think Catherine asked online, why did I go straight to the bar rather than what the normal practice is for most people is to go and be a solicitor for a number of years and then go to the bar? Purely because I'm old, and I didn't really have time to go and do 3 years here, 3 years there, and work out what I wanted to do. And because I've had the experience before of being on my feet and arguing, and it was just a logical move for me. I didn't have time to sort of time to go and do 3 years or 4 years as a solicitor before going to the bar. So at my age, I decided just to go straight to the bar.
Because you knew that was your end goal, and you had
yes.
Excellent. Well, we might zip to Rowan down in Rocky and get him to introduce himself and tell you. Rowan's actually a triple threat. He's a 3-time alumnus of College of Law. So he did practical legal training, he's done a master's with us, and he's also done our legal practice management course. So welcome to Rowan.
Thanks for having me. Welcome everyone. It's been good to see the engagement. I've done a couple of these sessions, and sometimes we have very quiet people in the background. It's hard for us because we're talking, we don't know who we're talking to. So just wanted to say thanks for having me. A bit about me, I suppose. I am from the North Shore of Sydney. and I went on a holiday in about 2008, and I met my now wife. And like all good men that are whipped by their partners do, I packed everything up and moved to Cairns, and been happily married for 10 years now, but relocated my degree to JCU as well, and shout out to all the JCU people out there. Went to JCU and got my law degree. I was admitted in Cairns, and I was very fortunate that there's a lot of jobs on here about, there's a lot of information on here, people wanting to know about getting jobs. I think for me, I was really keen to get experience while I was studying, and I just went into every law firm. It was pretty soul-destroying, walking into some of the firms and saying, can I have a job? And everyone was like, get stuffed, you've got no experience. But eventually I got to legal aid, and the principal solicitor there happened to have someone who had quit that day, and I just dropped in on the right day and got my first job at legal aid. And then from there, I was really fortunate enough to get consistent work in the Cairns region. I was appointed the supervising solicitor of the Rockhampton office of the Queensland Indigenous Family Violence Legal Service, and relocated to Rockhampton. I did that for a very short period of time because that wasn't for me, and I decided to have a crack at opening my own law firm. We've been open now 3 years, and we've now got 6 staff, and we've got a new girl starting on the 20th, so that'll be 7, and we've also got a PLT position advertised, so that'll be 8 people. So we've been very lucky in Rockhampton to sort of explode, really, and I'm primarily practicing in criminal defence work, domestic violence and family law. Those spaces all work very well together, but I also like to do a bit of administrative law, like appeals, QCAT appeals and things like that. And yeah, so our firm are on the preferred supply panel for legal aid as well. So we do legal aid criminal defence work and legal aid domestic violence work. So that's a bit about me.
Thanks for that, Rowan. And we'll zip to Lauren out in the ISA. So Lauren's got a very interesting story. She's worked in a few different places. So Lauren, let's hear about your career story.
Sure. Well, similar to Rowan, I'm from Sydney originally, and shout out to Lachlan and Ian. I did my undergrad at UNE in Armidale. Postgrad was UTS in Sydney. As a young graduate, I got admitted in 2016. I basically was willing to go anywhere for the type of job I wanted. And I knew I wanted to do criminal law, and I knew I wanted to work in the community, the CLE sphere. So I applied anywhere and everywhere. I applied to APFLs. They offered me a job in Rockhampton. I said yes. And then I jumped onto Google Maps and was like, where is Rockhampton? So then, I got on a little plane with 2 suitcases and went to a town I'd never heard of, and it was the best decision I'd ever made in my life.
And how many hours north of Brisbane is that, just to give everyone an idea?
It's about a day's drive. You can do it in 6-7 hours, not 8, Rowan, 8 with a kid maybe.
Someone's sleeping. Older today.
My daughter needs regular wee breaks, so it takes us 8 hours.
True. So yeah, about a 7.5 hour drive north of Brisbane. So if you folded Queensland in half, it's about halfway from the border to the top. Yeah. And so I 2 years there as a criminal lawyer with the Aboriginal Legal Service, and did circuit work out of Rockhampton. And then in the end of last came to the Mount Isa office. So I am now 3 days drive from Brisbane, working with remote communities up in the Gulf of Carpentaria and northwest Queensland. Sorry, Rowan, that I did grossly underestimate that. It's 24 hours from Brisbane to Cairns. So just so that everyone else around Australia knows how long and big Queensland is. Excellent.
And from Cairns to the top of the tip is another, it's about 8 to 9 hours drive from there. So
it's a big state, isn't it?
State, yeah.
I'm going to be asking Lauren a little bit more about what working on the circuit involves. So I'm just also trying to keep a bit of an eye on some of the questions as well. But what we might do while I peruse the questions is people are really interested in working remotely by the looks of all the questions. So Rowan, how do you think people would find out about jobs and opportunities? Is it, and especially if they're going to an area, I mean, you moved from an area that you weren't brought up in Queensland at all, and Lauren's the same. How did you go about networking, connecting, and is it who you know, or how do you connect to the job, or is it advertised?
I think it was what Tim was saying, like in these smaller communities, it's so different in the regional areas. Now, I might have a case where Tim's on the other side today and we're clashing heads, and then next week I'm briefing him, you know what I mean? So you have to have good working relationships. I'm sure Sarah Jane's going to say the same about Toowoomba. It's a very close community, and we all have to see each other every day. You might practice in Brisbane and you may not be against the other solicitor again for the rest of your career. So I think in the smaller regions, you get to be known a lot quicker. I was very fortunate when I started in Cairns because everyone knows everyone. And I think what is the most important thing when you get your first job is making yourself indispensable. Anyone can do what we do, but we need people that can do it really well. If you make yourself indispensable, you're going to get job opportunities, you're going to get offers. And if you're someone who is open, honest, transparent in a small place like Rockhampton or Cairns, you're going to be known quite quickly. And the thing is, the legal community is very small. I know Tim from my time in Cairns. I also know Lauren very well. So even though we're geographically separated by many, many hours, if I do something unethical or inappropriate, you end up in a forum like this where you're alongside each other. So it's just really important to understand that the legal community is very small. When it comes to getting employment, though, I think it's a matter of getting to know the solicitors. Solicitors and lawyers and barristers, we sort of might have a little bit of an ego issue, which means if you come and ask us questions, we're probably going to talk your ear off and tell you about it. So I get a lot of people coming up to me saying g'day. They may have seen me walking into court, because generally in a place like Rockhampton, we're the only people wearing a suit. So they can generally tell you're a lawyer. So, don't be afraid to go and say g'day to someone, introduce yourself. But it's important not to be arrogant or cocky, because that's really a barrier. One other thing is, sorry to talk for so long, is one thing that really is important is remembering your professionalism is not just what you do in court or at work, it's your whole life. So if you're out getting blind on a Saturday and I see you and then you come in for a job interview, probably not going to employ you, because in this profession, professionalism is not just what you do during 9 to 5, it's your whole aspect of your life. Okay, so just remember those things. You might be at a race meet or something, or a law association dinner. If you're blind meeting people, it's not a good look. So professionalism is more than just what you do between 9 to 5. Sorry, Sarah.
No, that's okay. I think just adding on to what Rowan was saying about people drawing a conclusion about you or forming an opinion for job opportunities in matters, whether it's getting your first opportunity or whether it's about moving up in your career or climbing the career ladder, so to speak. A really valid and really important piece of advice that I received during my career was that clients come and go, but the people on the other side, the other solicitors, will usually always be around. And I think if you approach that in all of your conduct with colleagues, when you are, whether it is having a job interview that perhaps doesn't result in actually getting a job, or whether it's working in a career and with an employer and somebody on the other side and you have a client, if you become too enmeshed in your situation or too enmeshed in your client's situation, then that will have an impact on you. And certainly, like Rowan has said, in regional communities where where everyone does know everyone, or even if it's not personally, there's a joke in Toowoomba that every person is only 2 steps removed, and that you have this connection with everyone in one way or the other. And I think that is said for all regional communities. If you keep that in mind, then I think you will always approach whatever situation you're in a way that will attract people who think the same way as you. Because looking for a job is more than just the job being available. It's about finding a place that you actually are going to fit with, because there is more to a career and more to a job and more to the law than simply knowing the law. Like Rowan said, a lot of people can do that job. Being excellent is also about your environment.
Absolutely. And Lauren and I had a really interesting discussion last week, actually. Lauren was explaining the circuit. Maybe we'll flip to Lauren and talk about that, and about how small the legal community is out. Because someone did ask this question, when we're talking remotely, we're not talking about working from home situations. We're talking outside of COVID-19, and isn't that refreshing? We're talking jobs in regional Australia outside of whatever capital city CBD. So even if it is sort of small towns on the coast, or way out west, or way up north, or wherever it is. So, but Lauren was talking about having dinner with judges, and how well, you do get to know the judges and the other lawyers on the circuit. And certainly there's a very famous quote about taking years to build up a reputation, but 5 minutes to ruin it, and that can happen. The good thing about smaller communities is everyone knows everyone. The bad things about smaller communities is that everyone knows everyone. So, Lauren, you had some great stuff to say about that.
Yeah. I would echo the sentiments conveyed by Rowan and Sarah. Certainly, there is a lot of socialising in our profession, and yes, if you're all on circuit in a remote town and you're all at the same going,
well, we might have to get you to flick your camera.
Me?
Just flick your camera off, I think, Lauren.
All right, cool. As I was saying, is that better?
Much better. Perfect.
As I was saying, there's plenty of social opportunities in our profession. There are judges' dinners, there are your law association functions, and on circuit, yes, you all do have dinner together. Your, I guess, professional reputation is, as Rowan said, it's how you behave in those functions as well. I noticed someone commented and they said, "I'm glad I don't drink." It's just a case of, not drinking. Obviously, that's everyone's choice. No one's going to judge you for it. But it's about, I guess, how you conduct yourself. And yes, as you say, in a small town, you do get to know everyone quickly. You get to know their profession quickly. Treat everyone well. That's probably one of the things that's made my life so much easier, is to treat prosecutions well, treat corrective services well, because then they'll get you that instant phone call that you need. They'll negotiate with you and take you at your word if you say you've got a good bail address and you've spoken to the occupants. Your job becomes easier if you have credibility, and you build credibility through treating people well, being honest with them, letting people know you're fair dinkum. And I think that applies probably to the city as well as the regions, but perhaps it's more heightened in the regions because, as Sarah has said, you sort of know everyone on the other side. As Rowan has said, everyone gets to know everyone. So
I think I lost you.
Can I just add to that too, in terms of what everyone else has already said, is that certainly the advantage, when I was doing my law degree and I decided I was going to go straight to the bar, I kept thinking, well, who's going to brief me? Because, everyone knows, because it's a small town, everyone knows I've only just done, finished my law degree, and who's going to, and been an associate to a Supreme Court judge for 1 year, who's going to brief me? But the reality is, because it was a small town, people knew you. If you did a good job, the briefs come in, and they continue to come in. Plus, there's the advantage of, as others have indicated, is because it's a small community, you get to know everybody, and you're either up against them every week or every other week, or you're meeting them at a social function or a CPD. As a member of the bar here, every time we have a visiting judge coming through, the district court judges come through visit. We've got 2 based here in Cairns, but then the others circuit through. We probably get a dozen or so a year. We have a lunch where there's just the bar having lunch with that visiting judge. So you get to actually have that personal one-on-one contact with them. The judges, are part of that collegiate environment that we have in Cairns, and I'm sure it's true in other regions as well. And they're more than willing to provide feedback on your performance in court. Now, so far, it's all been positive for me. That's always a good sign. But it's that small town has its advantages because everyone knows you, but it has the disadvantage that everyone knows you as well. So as long as you do a good job, the work will come in.
We've got a great question here from Emma, and she said that she's in a similar situation to Tim in that she has an established career in Sydney, now looking to pivot into a career in law in my late 30s. And this is a question that's actually on our list, is what are some of the opportunities that you've had working in regional Australia that you wouldn't have had if you'd gone back to the workforce as a law graduate in Sydney? And I think Rowan's got some pearls of wisdom. Tell your on your feet the next day story too, Rowan.
Yeah, literally. So I worked for a firm. I was really lucky because I had a really fast and loose boss when I was first admitted. And I love him very dearly. He's still a good friend of mine. But I had a matter where I had been working as a law clerk on the matter. It was listed for a trial on the Monday. I got admitted on the Friday, and I ran a Queensland Civil Administrative Tribunal hearing on the Monday. Running a trial literally on your first day as a lawyer, it was something that would not have happened in a city. Especially without a barrister. And I got my bottom kicked. I got absolutely annihilated, but it was so much fun. It's like when you're learning to skateboard and you fall off and you graze your knees, you get back up and you go, okay, well, I won't do that again. And I learned many lessons that day. I think too, just that advocacy in the city, generally, from speaking with colleagues and friends, people were going a couple of years before they'd actually start speaking in court. In a regional town, when I was a second-year law student, I was doing mentions in the Supreme Court, District Court, doing adjournments, things that as a law student, I was getting that opportunity for advocacy, which meant that when I was admitted, I was confident enough to do pleas of guilty and those advocacy interim hearings in the Federal Circuit Court. I think too, what Tim was saying about small towns is that because there's only, like in Cairns, there's one Federal Circuit Court judge. In Rockhampton, there's one Federal Circuit Court judge. There's one Supreme Court judge in Cairns and Rockhampton. You get to learn their idiosyncrasies as well, which means as a practitioner, it's double-edged because you can really hone your advocacy skills for that decision maker. What happens is sometimes when you go away into the city, you're anticipating appearing in front of that person and these other judges do things slightly different. So it's double-edged both ways. You get a lot of opportunities to do a lot more advocacy, definitely in the regional areas, because in a place like Rockhampton, we've only got 6 barristers, I think. So generally most magistrates court advocacy, myself and my 2 junior solicitors will do all of that ourselves without counsel, unless the client really wants it.
Can I just add to Rowan's story about sort of getting thrown in the deep end as he was? Mine's similar in that the day after I got admitted to the bar, I appeared as I was a junior in a 20-year-old cold case murder trial. And day 2 of the trial, I was on my feet in the Supreme Court arguing whether there was still a common law duty to dispose of a human body, and quoting Queen's bench cases from the 1800s in front of my old judge, Justice Henry. If that didn't terrify me and get me to realise I'd arrived at the bar, nothing was going to. And then when I finished and sat down, I turned to my senior and sort of commented on that this was my first appearance and this is what I was doing, even though he knew that. He said, well, it only gets easier from here. And ended up getting a written judgment out of that. I didn't win that argument, but we won the case. And a few months later, I was then, we had a 4-defendant rape trial where the other counsel had been at the bar for 20 years, 10 years and 7 years, and I'd been there for 6 months. And I remember at the time sitting there thinking, I would never even get briefed in this if I was in Brisbane. So it really gives you a vast experience. You know, I've got a brief before me at the moment for an attempted murder trial in the Supreme Court. You would never get that as a baby barrister in Brisbane, but those opportunities arise, and so there's the real advantages in that regard.
Did you want to add something to that, Lauren, or should we move?
Yes, I will. I'll stop my video so you can hear me better. Similar scenario. As soon as I arrived in Rockhampton, I was doing bail applications. My friends in Sydney, meanwhile, were so excited because they had a court day coming up next month, and they were so excited that they got to go to court next month. Meanwhile, I was looking at my diary saying, oh my God, I'm so excited. I might actually get one office day next month. So yeah, you definitely get thrown into the deep end, get to do a bit of anything and everything that, you know, while my Sydney friends photocopying.
Exactly, and you've also the same thing. I am trying to sort of summarise the questions here as well, and we obviously won't be able to get, there's 130 people online, so I might not get to all your questions, but definitely reach out on LinkedIn, and if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn and connect with us and ask questions after the fact as well. So looking at our esteemed panel, Sarah Jane is from Toowoomba and still lives and works in Toowoomba, but the other 3 panellists are actually not from the area where they're practicing. So a lot of people are asking questions about, okay, so I'm in a city now, I'm studying in Melbourne or Sydney, wherever it is, and I'm actually really interested in working in regional Australia. One, do they prefer people born and bred? How do I connect and network in if I'm coming in? Do you move there first? Do you try and get a job first? What are your thoughts? And someone else has already basically networking questions.
Well, I moved. I got the job before I moved because I needed the job to pay the rent, right?
Yep.
And then once I moved and I landed in Rockhampton, I joined my local CQLA, so my local law station, which was very active. But you can also join other things, whatever you're interested in. I was interested in politics, so I joined politics. Whatever else you're interested in, yeah, join those because they make your friends outside of law, which become great for your mental health and well-being.
So what was that you were just saying? Join those other sorts of groups like Rotary, or those other community groups where you'll meet people across the board. Is that what you were responding to? Yeah,
anything you're interested in. If you play tennis, join the tennis, golf, whatever you're interested in, there'll be a little association for it where you'll meet like-minded friends and have some non-law friends, which I think is important as well.
And everyone says that, from judges to senior people in the legal profession, it's important to have those that mental health release outside of the law as well. I think a lot of people are asking, is there any practice areas that are more likely to be in regional Australia? I mean, someone was interested in environmental law, for example. So should you be looking to be more generalist or more specialist, or what sorts of areas?
I can only probably speak for the Toowoomba region, but certainly we have both boutique firms that only work in certain areas. For instance, we have several boutique-only family law firms. We have environmental firms or firms who only deal with business law. More novel sort of areas such as your maritime law you wouldn't find in Toowoomba because we don't have an ocean. So some of those sports
law in Townsville, though, I hear.
So some of those areas you're obviously not going to find in the Toowoomba region, but you may find in other regions. But certainly we have a vast array of both boutique single practice or very limited restricted practice firms, and then also firms that are very generalist. So you have a very wide variety, particularly in Toowoomba and the surrounding areas, of firms which are micro or smaller firms that might have a one-man band sort of scenario. And then you also have situations where you have very particularized and very specific law firms that are working in specialized areas. So there's usually something for everyone. Depends what region you go to is what you're going to find, really, in my opinion. If you're looking for a specialised area of law, then you just look for that law as opposed to a region. If you're looking for a region, then you probably have to be more prepared to maybe work in an area you're not otherwise interested in or don't think is your peak area. I mean, for me personally, I didn't want to practice in family law. It wasn't an area that I ever thought that I would practice in. I did a little bit of it as a paralegal when I was studying my degree. And when I was admitted, the law firm I worked for said, we've got an opportunity for a solicitor role as a family lawyer, and I know you don't want to do that. And like a lot of graduates, I wanted to do criminal law, which was an area I was working in at the time as a criminal clerk. And I sort of had this opportunity where I could be a lawyer in an area I wasn't really interested in, or I could continue to be a criminal clerk and hope that a job came up in my area. And I made the decision to take the solicitor job. And it turned out to be the best decision I ever made, because I ended up really enjoying the work and the people that I work with and the opportunities that were available. And so later down the track, when I had the opportunity to actually move into a criminal solicitor role full time, it wasn't an opportunity that I wanted to take any longer, because I wanted to continue to hone my skills in this particular area. So sometimes, in my opinion, you have to remember not to get so tunnel focused and have that tunnel vision, because opportunities will often creep up on you when you least expect it.
Absolutely. And it's really funny where life takes you, and something that comes up and you go this way, sometimes you don't realize why, it sort of all happens for a reason, doesn't it? I'm a strong believer in that. And a few years later you go, oh, okay, well that brought me here, and I'm glad that I'm here. So yeah, it's really interesting when you look back and reflect about the twists and turns of where life takes you. Also, people were quite interested in the work-life balance, and what's everyone's thoughts on that? Do you feel like Rowan doesn't have one, he says? And are clients in rural areas more difficult to work with than in the city, or are people just people?
People are just people. I mean, on the weekends for me, it could be something like just hanging out with your family at the beach. I've got a good group of mates here that are not associated with the law. I think it's important to have some connection outside the law, because you can become very clinical about what we deal with. So I've got a lot of mates, thankfully, that aren't lawyers and have no interest in law, and we might go shooting or four-wheel driving or go on the motorbikes or something. So you still got to have downtime, and if you're a bloke, you've got to have bloke time. If you're a single lady, you've got to have single lady time. If you're a mum, you've got to have some time when you don't have your kids around. It's just really important, I think, to just remember to look after yourself and your own mental health. Absolutely. Yeah. But in the regional areas too, there's just, it's not like the city where you've got a lot on, but there's still a lot you can do in a lot of regional areas. Cairns, you've got the Great Barrier Reef. Rocky, we've got the reef and islands, four-wheel driving, stuff like that. So just, it doesn't matter where you live, there's always good things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, what about pay and cost of living? I know that Lauren was from Sydney moving to regional, and Rowan the same. You both had some stuff to say about that when we chatted last week.
Sure. I love rubbing it in my Sydney friends' faces how much I pay for rent for a 3-bedroom house with a swimming pool, which is less than they pay for a room in Sydney in a share house. So that's cool. My commute to work was 7 minutes when I was living in Rocky. It's now like 3 minutes in Mount Isa. But I did want to quickly say something about that second part of the question about a client in regional areas harder to work with than in city areas. People are people anywhere. Let's start by saying that. I do find sometimes my geographical distances can be difficult. If my client lives on an island and I only go to that island once a month, that can make getting instructions and things difficult. If my client's English is a second language, which can occur in the middle of the city, I suppose, if you're working with other cultural communities as well, that has its challenges. So it's not so much being a country person that makes them more difficult, but there are challenges like geographical distance from you, or language barriers. Poverty exists everywhere. It comes with its own barriers as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was just going to pick up on that point. I mean, certainly cultural issues are very significant, particularly here in Cairns. I mean, the vast majority of my criminal defence clients that I deal with are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. So you've got a whole range of issues there in terms of those cultural issues. Often, English is their second or third language. So you've got to be conscious of those sorts of things when you're conferencing them or when they're appearing in court. They actually understand what is happening. There's issues in relation to being able to contact them, particularly if they're living in remote communities. I mean, we've had, some people may know, there's a lot of trouble going on in Arakoon, which is a Aboriginal community in Cape York, where there's clan fights going on and significant levels of violence, and people have just left town. And I've got a couple of juvenile clients who I've had them for well over 6 months now, and just haven't been able to conference them because they can't be tracked down. They've left town and those sorts of issues. So it presents difficulties in that regard. I mean, people are people, but they come with quite different backgrounds, particularly in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander space, which clearly Lauren will know a lot about as well, and deal with that on a daily basis.
Yes, I'm not sure if everything I said got heard because everyone froze, so I apologise if I dropped out there.
I think we got most of it. I actually want to change to another question because we've got a few questions coming in about the difficulty of finding jobs for them at the moment with the COVID-19 thing. I just wanted to, and this isn't really about working regionally, I just wanted to say, hang in there, guys. The law will always be there. I think Sarah Jane said this last week, that no matter, people will always have disputes. There'll always be contracts needing to be negotiated or challenged. People get divorced, people buy property, stuff happens, people commit crimes. The law is always going to be there, and when we do resurface, the jobs are going to be available again. But Sarah Jane, I did want to chat to you about what you were saying last week. What skills and attributes, how do you think COVID-19 is going to change the job market in terms of opportunities, but also in what employers are looking for in this new normal?
I think particularly for boutique firms, maybe the COVID-19 situation has probably made those business owners reevaluate the teams that they work with and the people that they work with. A lot of smaller regional-based firms didn't necessarily have the technology available to quickly transition to work from home situations, or had to adapt their practices in some way because there was talk of the courts completely shutting down. There was a lot of, scare tactic talk that was coming out of the media, and there was a lot of things that really changed for the practices. What has eventuated now, as we're going into 4-6 weeks of being a lot of firms working from home, is that a lot of those bugs have probably by this time been sorted out. And I believe that a lot of business owners and law firm owners are probably sitting down and thinking about what went right in this scenario and probably what went wrong. And in doing that, I think they're really going to be looking at their team. I'm very fortunate to say that I have an amazing team, and I'm sort of standing here saying ha-ha to my friends who maybe are complaining a bit and saying that I have a really great team that I can work with. But there is definitely going to be people out there who are perhaps considering the soft skills or the human-to-human skills that might be necessary if a bad situation happens again. How did their team members, or what are the skills that people are looking for to be more adaptive? And I've always been an advocate for the best lawyers that I know have two very important skills. And the first is resilience and the second is grit. And that comes whether you're an advocacy-based lawyer or whether you're a lawyer in the regions or a lawyer in the city. Our job is often involves getting yelled at, whether that's by a judicial officer, a vulnerable client, the other side. There's so many different ways that we are in this situation. And in my opinion, grit and resilience are the two skills that are very important to me in the lawyers that I employ. And I think that perhaps some of the smaller firms who maybe were overlooking those human skills or those soft skills may find those now more appealing than ever before. And so things like GPAs and the top skills, for regional practices and smaller law firms, they may not be the number one key item that they're looking for. And certainly GPA has never been the number one key item that everybody is looking for in law firms, but it perhaps has fallen further down the ranks as we return back to some sort of normality post-COVID-19, where people are thinking, well, if we went into another scenario where we had to be dynamic and we had to pick things up and move with them, what are the skills that we would need in a team, and what really made this an easy or an uneasy process for us? So those sorts of skills, in my opinion, are going to be much more relevant and perhaps even at the forefront of people's decision-making skills, as opposed to just those regular can they type a letter or can they interpret legislation skills that perhaps classically are associated with being a lawyer.
Absolutely. And Lauren, what about the community legal sector? Obviously, you're not representing the whole sector, but I was thinking the other day, where are the jobs going to be? And I would think that community legal centres and the community, organisations such as ACTSOL and other organisations that usually take a lot of volunteers have had to turn those volunteers away for the time being because there's no resources to give them a laptop and send them home and to be able to supervise their work. But I've been saying to students, keep reaching out to where you're interested in working and saying, thanks for the work that you're doing, and keep safe, keep well. I'm here to help when you're taking volunteers. Do you think there's going to be lots of community legal centres sort of screaming out for law students and volunteers after this is all over?
Yes, I do. In fact, I think they generally always are. I know ACTSOL has kept hiring throughout this. We've had 2 new lawyers hired in our office during this COVID-19 stuff. So the jobs will be there. As I think you said before, it's important to remember we are, I think, essential workers. Yeah. We are a rule of law society. And that is one of the most fundamental, I guess, principles of our society. We're a democratic society. We're a rule of law society. I don't think we're going to lose that to COVID. So the courts will continue, law continues, police continue to arrest people. If we have an economic downturn, then more people are going to qualify for legal aid or meet the merit test for community legal centres. So you might find that sphere actually does increase, or legal aid might need more funding. Yeah.
There will definitely be opportunities, and I would think that probably employers like Rowan and Sarah Jane are sitting there thinking about what's going to be happening in their practice. And as I said to students the other day, a business owner is always thinking about what's happening next. They're managing what's happening now, but also planning for what's happening next and thinking about, this area of our business is going to expand. Who am I? Rowan's got a PLT opportunity available at the moment. There will be businesses and, insolvency law is probably going to be big. And family law, unfortunately, as well. So already planning on what they need to fill those gaps.
Can I provide some feedback? Because I have reviewed, I'm an employer, so I've reviewed, 50 resumes in the last week. Everyone's asking about how to get a job. lawyers, our sales pitch generally is, with Tim being the exception because his sales pitch is what generally comes out of his mouth. But for us, it's how we present ourselves in a written format. And that's probably not fair, Tim. Obviously, you do written advices and various things, but your resume is the first indication of your professionalism. So if your covering letter has spelling and grammatical errors, in the document that you have spent the most amount of time on to get this job, if it's got grammatical errors, it's not formatted properly, you've got inconsistent formatting. For me as a boss, I go, this is what they're offering me, and they can't even do a covering letter properly. So people are asking, should I email a person? And I'm saying to do that. I'm saying connect with people, say good day to people. Someone earlier said that they'd been at court wearing a suit. That's a really good idea, because what happens is when someone's new in town wearing a suit, you go, oh, who's this person? And for me, I want to find out who they are. But definitely when you're applying for jobs or connecting with a law firm, think about the formatting, run it through a spell checker, make sure
Someone
that...
else look at it.
Get someone else to read it, yeah. Don't just shoot off an email at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is you selling yourself. If you can't compose an email to your future boss, how are you going to compose an email to your clients that are paying $300 an hour for that email? You know what I mean? So whilst I'm telling everyone to connect, make sure you do it in a professional and appropriate manner. Another piece of advice is, for example, you meet me and Tim and Sarah Jane tonight, and you're wanting to apply for a job with us, and we've been nice and friendly. Don't just assume that we're automatically mates. You know, dear Mr. King, I wanted to apply for a job with you. That's professional. Not g'day Rowan, because I've said g'day a lot and whatever. I don't mean literally say g'day. You still have to be professional, but I think what's most important is being real. I've just employed a girl here. Her resume was really good. Her covering letter was really good. There was a couple of errors, but she was so real and transparent in her interview that I thought, this is someone I can trust with my business, not just someone who can speak and walk the walk and talk the talk. So there's a lot more to employing in regional areas than your GPA, where you went to school, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people are asking, you know, if they're not from an area, how to connect, and I guess how to connect at a distance as well. LinkedIn's a great tool as well. So definitely get on LinkedIn. The College of Law has a LinkedIn tips brochure. If anyone wants to contact us, we can certainly send that through to you. So just get on the send a message through the Facebook, the College of Law Facebook page, and either myself or someone from our marketing team will zip that out to you. We'll also be sending you an email with this recording, so you'll have our details. But you know, someone's asking, should you drop in? Drop in to drop off your resume. But obviously, other people are asking, well, I'm not there. How do I connect?
If you're going to drop in, I mentioned earlier in the comments, if you're going to a law firm that does a lot of advocacy, those lawyers are going to be wearing full suits with ties. So if you're wanting a job there, you should wear what you'd be wearing to court. If you're a man, you'd be wearing a suit with a tie. If you're a lady, you might put a blazer on, so you look like you're about to go to court, because that for me gives me an indication, what's this person going to look like representing my business? When it comes to dropping into other places, I think just getting a bit of a feel for the place that you're looking at, seeing what people look like, because at the end of the day, you've got to be professional when you come into a professional workspace. We are in a very old profession. That's why people like Tim wear robes and wigs. It's about tradition. That's part of our profession. It's a big part of our profession. It's something we need to maintain. And if you rock up wearing boardies and a shirt, you're going to get fobbed off, as someone mentioned earlier. When it comes to feedback, I do appreciate with CVs, it is very difficult. Like I advertised a admin position recently, and we had about 50 applications in 2 days or 3 days. We had to cancel the ad because we're getting so many applications in. I think the main thing is selling yourself. So really work on your CV, maybe even get some professional assistance in making sure it's formatted properly. And if you can't afford that, obviously, law students are used to writing assignments, you're used to formatting documents. These letters are no different.
If you're still at university, you can also contact your careers and employment sector of your university, and there'll be workshops and there's all sorts of ideas online as well.
Can I just pick up on that issue as well?
Yes.
I know there's a lot of questions about how to get a job and so forth, and we've talked around networking and so forth, and Sarah Jane raised this as well. But certainly, I'm a big advocate for being involved in your student association and your district law association and going to all those events and functions. That's how you get known, and you get to make those connections so that you can it's much easier to start a conversation with someone once you've actually met them over a CPD function or a trivia night through the law association or whatever. I again, the advantage of being in a regional community, the three judges that are based here, or the 4 judges that are based here in Cairns, the 3 state and the 1 federal, they know me by first name. They knew me by first name when I was a law student, because I attended those functions. So that when I put in an application, they automatically put a name to that application, a face to that application.
Yep.
Those things are really important to be involved in your district law association. And I'm pretty sure most district law associations allow students to be members, and it's at a cheaper rate, and attend those functions that they have. And they even have their regional conferences they now have student rates to attend those if you can afford to go to those as well.
Absolutely. A lot of areas will have young lawyer associations, and we have the Queensland Law Society here in Queensland, but other states have their equivalent district law associations. So getting onto LinkedIn and connecting with lawyers. There's a lawyer on the Gold Coast, for example. She's just started a networking, some regular networking events, obviously not at the moment. So, connecting with other lawyers who are then saying, hey, this is a great event coming up, and going, oh yeah, I'm going to go to that. So it is, I know, finding the time and finding the money but it will pay off. And I often say to students, look, do 2 things a semester if that's all you've got time for. But do 2 quality things. Really work that event. Make up some business cards. Really work that event. Connect with people. Follow up on a LinkedIn connection, and then stay in touch.
And just following on from that, I know all of the presidents in the district law associations statewide in Queensland. There's a number of district law associations. If you need information about them, the easiest place to get it is to actually contact the Queensland Law Society. So as students, you can be student members of the Queensland Law Society, even if you're not admitted as a solicitor, and they can give you information for your local district law association. So there's the South Burnett Law Association, there's the Far North Queensland Law Association, there's a ton of different law associations based all around the state. There's a number in Brisbane, Gold Coast, all across the state. We all connect amongst each other. We discuss the opportunities that are available and how we link in with students, how we link in with junior practitioners and early career lawyers, how we link in with our more senior advisors and the Queensland Law Society directly. So we have this really great network. So if you're in one area, you can join your current district law association, whether that be as a student members if it's offered, or otherwise just as a non-member. Most district law associations will allow non-members to attend their events if you're connected to the law in some way. So reaching out to them is really good opportunity. And then through that opportunity, you can actually connect with the other district law associations that you might be considering a move to or wanting to gain a connection to get a feel, if you've got a job there, what to expect. Or otherwise, if you're looking at moving in that area for family or other reasons, to have that connection before you go, or to know what to expect about that region, because every region is different. So I would start with Queensland Law Society. I would absolutely recommend programs that they offer, such as student membership. And also there's an amazing advocacy course that they run every year or every off year. It's being run in Cairns again this year. It was run last year as a criminal law program. And again, this year it's being run as part of a family law-based program. So if those are programs that you're interested in or areas you want to work in, building those skills in whatever way is available, I cannot advocate for that more, because those are what are going to set you apart. Being involved is going to set you apart, whether it's from a connection with a colleague or whether it's in relation to some sort of upskill that you've been able to develop. I absolutely cannot recommend those sorts of connections more. And as Tim said, I absolutely agree with what his comments were about engaging with your both your university law societies, but also with your district law associations.
Absolutely. Or whatever the equivalent is in your state. Sorry, we are all Queenslanders, so we are talking very Queensland. So we don't mean to be parochial, but there'll be the equivalent in every state, and probably the best thing to do is to go to your Law Student Society on campus, join them. I'm involved with every Law Student Society in Queensland. They do some amazing events. I mean, this event was organised by the guys up in JCU Cairns. So these are the sorts of things that they do. Sometimes it's on campus, and sometimes you do turn up, not tonight, there's a million people with us, but you do turn up and there's only 20, 30 people there, or 10 people there, and there's this amazing panel. You get really good connections with the lawyers, like, okay, well, everyone else is missing out on this connection. I'm here, I'm in front, I'm meeting people. And then, you know, your Law Student Society is also going to know who it is in your local area that you should connect in with as well. So I'm sorry that there's probably a lot of questions that we haven't been able to get to, but you know, it's been a fascinating conversation. We are all on LinkedIn, actually, except for Lauren, so, who's she's probably trying to dial back in. But certainly connect with us all. Here's a little tip, and we'll just pretend the panel can't hear this. When you're connecting with someone, you could say, "Dear Sarah Jane," you can write a little note, "Dear Sarah Jane, I loved hearing what you said today on the panel. I'd love to join your network," or something like that to Rowan and Tim and Sarah Jane, and I'm available as well. So I am very conscious of time, but what is your main tip that everyone will go around, maybe starting with Tim? What's your main tip for students who are, you know, whether it's a confidence thing, maybe it's a networking thing, how to get out there and you know, get that dream job out in the.
I think my last remark probably is you know, networking and knowing people. I mean, that's how you're going to get the work. There's been a few questions about, you know, how do I improve my skills in advocacy or so forth. You know, I found as a student, I thought it was odd how little we were required to actually attend court and watch what was going on. Now, I appreciate a vast majority of solicitors never attend court at all, but I just think sitting in the back of a courtroom, when I worked in politics, I used to sit and watch Parliament, listen to Parliament when I was a student, and that's how I got interested in it and got to understand how things operated. And I've basically done the same thing in relation to the law. You know, if I had a spare morning, I'd look at the law list and just go and sit in the back of the court and watch people. So it just means that it's less scary when you have to do it the first time, but it's also a way of meeting people and getting an understanding of how the courts actually work.
I've had so many lawyers give that advice, Tim, and I think that's invaluable to whether you're a law student or a PLT student or you finished all that. I think it's really, really, really important. I've heard judges tell students to do that too.
I appreciate it's a bit difficult in the current COVID environment, but once we get out of that, then sitting in the back of the courtroom is a very good way of learning what's going on and who's doing what and how to do it.
Dial into the chorus call and listen to the chorus call.
Yeah. As I said to someone online in the rants, I mean, I still go, you know, one of the disadvantages of being a barrister in Cairns is you don't get to see a lot of senior counsel. There's only, for example, there's only 2 QCs in Cairns, and only one of those tends to do court work. The others does mostly mediation. So, you know, the opportunity to actually see other advocates in practice, I still do that. So if I'm travelling, I was in Sydney earlier in the year or late last year, and I just went and sat in the back of Supreme Court trial just to see and hear a different person advocate in a different way. So it's very useful for exercise.
Absolutely. And Rowan, what's your last words of wisdom? You've got so much to share with students, and we really appreciate your time tonight.
I think it's just being real is really important in this industry, especially in remote areas. If you don't know something, ask a question. I think for me, I was really lucky. I had some really good mentors in Cairns when I was practicing there, people that you can ask questions to. Part of that networking doesn't stop. That happens once you're a lawyer too. It's about getting to know people. There is a handful of people that I know if I'm in a tricky situation, I can call at any time and ask those really stupid questions. Is this a conflict or is it not a conflict? So it's really important to remember that just because you've got a law degree and just because you're admitted doesn't mean you know everything. You're learning every single day, and it's just really important to get a good bunch of people around you. My piece of advice I wish that I'd heard when I was in all of your positions is this. It doesn't matter about what your mates at uni think about you. It doesn't matter about what your opposing solicitor thinks of you. It's just really important what the judge or the magistrate thinks about you. So be professional in all aspects of your life. Make sure you maintain that in all aspects of your life. And it doesn't matter if your opposing solicitor thinks you're an idiot. If you win the case and the magistrate likes you or appreciates you, that's the most important thing. This profession does have a very big habit of cutting people down, especially people that are coming up through the ranks. So don't get disheartened when that happens to you. As long as the judiciary respects you, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely, great. And Sarah Jane, what are your last pearls of wisdom for all of our people listening tonight?
I think one of the really important things that I was told by a mentor during my very early days in my career was when you would have a result that potentially wasn't what you were hoping for, or wasn't a scenario where you were came out as the winner, so to speak, to use that colloquial term. I was told to evaluate yourself and how you on your performance and not on your result. And what I mean by that is to consider, did you take the client through it? Did you give proper advice? Did you advocate to the best of the capabilities? Because the case is the case is the case. Sometimes the case that you have that your client wants to run is a losing case, and you can give them the advice and you can tell them how to deal with it, and they might not take your advice and you have to run something to trial that might not be successful, or you might have to do something that might not necessarily be successful. But your reflection, and often lawyers are type A perfectionist personalities, the reflection of how you are performing is completely based on your performance and whether you've gone through those appropriate steps, as opposed to whether you won or lost. And that's something I definitely have told a number of people that I've worked through, junior practitioners, early career lawyers, when they're a bit down in the dumps on the results. And I think it's really, really important to remember that the performance of you as an advocate or as a advisor to a client in a very difficult situation is how you should be determining whether you are good, so to speak, at the law.
Absolutely. Excellent. Rowan, was that...
It's got Lauren here. So the question was, what's your last bit of advice for these people who are about to embark on their career as lawyers, something to that effect? What's your advice, Lauren?
Short and sweet. My best advice would be try anything, grab any opportunity, because you don't know where it'll lead. Put yourself out there and treat people well. If you treat people well, you'll be treated well.
Absolutely. All amazing, amazing. Well, thank you very much to everyone who logged on, and especially a big thank you to Lauren and Sarah Jane and Tim and Rowan. There's a million thank yous on the chat as well. So I'd like to, on behalf of everyone that's listening, send big thank yous. And we've certainly covered regional, or definitely regional Queensland, from the bush to the beach, from the tip way out west and out to Toowoomba and in central Queensland as well. So thank you very, very much for your time. So if we didn't get to every single question, we could sit here all night and chat, but I know that probably people have got MasterChef to watch and dinner to cook and families and maybe some law
good judgments to read.
And law documents to read. Yes, well, I'm taking the MasterChef option. So thank you very much on behalf of the College of Law and Inter Alia Cairns, JCU Student Law Association as well. Thanks for your time, and we really appreciate all the advice that you've given to students tonight. So wishing everyone a good evening. Thanks everyone.
Bye. Have a great day.
Just down the line, Lauren, for a sec.
I will.